Imagine walking through a medieval castle. The walls echo with the footsteps of knights, courtiers, and servants. Candles flicker in stone corridors. On the surface, the royal court appears orderly, a world of feasts, ceremonies, and rituals, but behind closed doors, the story is very different. While kings and queens commanded armies and signed treaties, their lives were also shaped by something far more unpredictable: human desire. Forbidden romances, secret affairs, and hidden lust often intersected with power, politics, and even the fate of entire kingdoms. In a world where marriage was rarely about love, passion could be dangerous. Mistresses influenced empires, lovers caused rebellions, a queen's secret could topple a dynasty. And in many cases, the church was watching, judging, condemning, and sometimes exploiting these passions for political ends. Today we uncover the hidden lives of medieval royalty, their desires, betrayals, and scandals. This is the forbidden, intimate, and human side of the Middle Ages. In medieval Europe, marriage was a political strategy first and a personal connection second. Royal children were pawns in a larger game. A princess might be promised to a prince in another kingdom before she even reached puberty. These marriages were designed to secure borders, consolidate power, and form alliances. Love and personal happiness were luxuries few royals could afford. The stakes were enormous. A failed marriage could spark wars, destabilize kingdoms, or create succession crises. Take Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful women of the 12th century. At 15, she married King Louis II of France to strengthen political ties, but their personalities clashed. Eleanor was strong-willed and ambitious. Louis was devout but less decisive. Their union produced no male heir and was annulled. Within months, Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet, who became King Henry II of England. This marriage united vast lands, creating the Angevin Empire. Yet personal tension persisted. Henry was ambitious, Eleanor was outspoken, and both wanted to control the empire. Their marriage was as much a political battle as a personal union. Even after formal marriages were arranged, human desire found its way. Kings took mistresses, queens sometimes engaged in secret relationships, and these private affairs often had public consequences. Marriage in medieval Europe was a delicate balance between duty, politics, and desire, and it rarely satisfied the human heart. For kings, taking a mistress was often expected, even normalized. These women could wield significant influence, guiding decisions, shaping policies, or influencing succession. They were more than companions. They were power brokers. One of the most famous examples is Rosamund Clifford, known as Fair Rosamund, mistress to Henry II of England. Chroniclers described her as beautiful and clever, a gentle contrast to Henry's wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine. Rosamund's presence sparked political and personal tension. Eleanor, outraged by her husband's affair, encouraged her sons to rebel against Henry, creating a dynastic conflict that shook the kingdom. In France, the Tour de Nesle affair shocked the court. In the early 14th century, King Philip IV's daughters-in-law were accused of adultery with knights. Whether true or exaggerated by gossip, the accusations led to imprisonment and even death. The scandal damaged the royal family's reputation and affected succession, contributing to political instability that helped lead to the 100 Years' War. Edward II of England provides another example. Rumoured to have had intense relationships with his male favourites, Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despencer, Edward's personal choices angered the nobles. The favourites held real political influence, controlling lands, appointments, and decisions. Eventually, Edward's wife, Isabella of France, plotted with her lover Roger Mortimer to overthrow him. Personal desire collided with political ambition, showing how private relationships could have enormous public consequences. Mistresses weren't confined to kings. Nobles and dukes often had secret relationships that rivaled the influence of legitimate marriages. These relationships were intricate, layered, and fraught with danger, particularly when ambition, jealousy, or inheritance were involved. In medieval Europe, men had freedom, but women had restrictions. A king could maintain multiple mistresses, and it was socially acceptable. A queen's transgression could ruin her life. Why? Lineage. Succession depended on legitimate heirs. A king's illegitimate children were tolerated. A queen's adultery was treasonous. Eleanor of Aquitaine, despite her power, was imprisoned for years after conflicts with Henry II and her political involvement in her son's rebellion. Isabella of France, who orchestrated Edward II's deposition, became infamous as the she-wolf of France, despite her political genius. The double standard was clear. Male desire was tolerated. Female desire could destroy lives. Yet queens and noblewomen often navigated these constraints cleverly, using alliances, secret lovers, or political maneuvering to maintain influence and survival. The court was an arena of power, politics, and secrecy. Passion was never private. It was political. Romantic relationships were not just personal matters. They could determine the fate of kingdoms. The church dominated medieval life. It dictated morality, controlled marriage, and judged behavior. Adultery, lust, and passion outside marriage were sins to be punished. Yet the church often tolerated rulers who donated generously or maintained influence. Confessors and religious manuals outlined intimate rules, days for sex, appropriate behavior, and penalties for transgression. Yet enforcement was selective. Royals could often navigate these rules with gifts, favors, or clever diplomacy. At the same time, the church's moral authority could be weaponized. Accusations of adultery could delegitimize queens, influence succession, or justify political intervention. A whisper of scandal could bring down a dynasty. The intersection of church, state, and desire meant that private relationships had enormous public consequences. Forbidden love was never truly private in the Middle Ages. It was entwined with power, politics, and morality. Medieval Europe was full of notorious affairs and scandals. France, the daughters-in-law scandal, Tour de Nesle affair, rocked the royal family. Accused women faced imprisonment and death, highlighting how private relationships could endanger political stability. England, Edward II's male favourites caused political unrest and eventually contributed to his deposition. Spain, Isabella of Castile's court witnessed secret relationships among nobles that influenced succession and alliances. Holy Roman Empire, emperors and electors engaged in extramarital affairs that shaped alliances, trade, and succession disputes. These examples show a pattern. Desire could destabilize kingdoms. Affairs weren't just personal, they were political weapons, sources of rebellion, and catalysts for war. Despite danger, love letters, poems, and stories revealed genuine passion. Some relationships were emotionally real, not just strategic. Kings wrote letters filled with longing and jealousy. Mistresses sometimes held enormous informal power. Queens navigated complex social and political webs to protect themselves and their families. Many of these relationships inspired legends and myths: Tristan and Isolde, Lancelot and Guinevere, stories of forbidden love mirroring real events at courts across Europe. These letters and legends show that beneath political machinations, medieval royalty were human, capable of love, jealousy, and heartbreak. The Middle Ages were rife with scandals that shaped politics and culture. While kings and queens appeared majestic, many were enmeshed in webs of intrigue and passion. France again provides a striking example. Beyond the Tour de Nesle affair, King Philip IV's court frequently witnessed clandestine affairs. Nobles engaged in secret liaisons, sometimes with the king's knowledge, sometimes without. Allegiances could shift overnight based on love or jealousy, and scandals were exploited for political gain. One royal mistress could alter succession plans, spark a rebellion, or create distrust between kingdoms. England had its share of controversies. Henry VIII's marriages centuries later are more famous, but even earlier monarchs like Edward II demonstrate the dangers of favouritism intertwined with desire. His relationship with Piers Gaveston upset the balance of power among nobles, leading to open rebellion. Favouritism, when entwined with romance or secret attachment, was a dangerous game, one that could cost kings their thrones. Spain in the late medieval period also saw politically significant affairs. Isabella of Castile's court was rife with intrigue. Nobles sought secret relationships with influential women to gain favour with the monarch. These relationships, while private in intention, often had public consequences, affecting inheritance disputes, appointments, and alliances. In the Holy Roman Empire, emperors and electors similarly engaged in forbidden liaisons. Mistresses could secure lands, titles, or trade privileges. Such relationships, while personal, could influence political alliances and even the outcome of conflicts. These examples reveal a consistent theme. Love, lust, and desire were never truly private in medieval Europe. They were intertwined with power, status, and survival. Not all mistresses were passive participants. Many were intelligent, strategic, and highly influential. They knew how to use their proximity to kings to gain political leverage. Agnes Sorel, mistress to Charles VI of France, exemplifies this power. Known for her beauty and political acumen, she influenced court appointments and decisions, guiding France during a turbulent period. Agnes demonstrated that a mistress could wield more influence than some officially recognized nobles or advisors. In England, Alice Perrers, mistress of Edward III, also wielded considerable power. She was not just a romantic companion, but a political actor, involved in court decisions and legal matters. Chroniclers often depicted such women with suspicion or disdain, yet their influence was undeniable. Mistresses could serve as conduits for information, sway decisions in favor of allies, or even manipulate succession indirectly. Their role was complex. They were simultaneously lovers, confidants, and political players. Queens, under intense scrutiny, had to navigate forbidden desire with extreme caution. A misstep could endanger themselves, their children, and their kingdom. Isabella of France, who helped depose Edward II, exemplifies this delicate balance. Her affair with Roger Mortimer was both personal and political. While the relationship provided her with protection and influence, it also exposed her to criticism, vilification, and historical condemnation. She became known as the She-Wolf of France, a nickname reflecting societal condemnation rather than her political skill. In France, Marguerite de Bourgogne, a daughter-in-law of Philip IV, faced imprisonment for alleged adultery. The scandal demonstrated the harsh consequences for women accused of secret love, consequences that men often escaped. The double standard was pervasive. Male rulers could pursue extramarital relationships with limited consequences, but female royals risked imprisonment, exile, or death. Despite these risks, queens and noblewomen occasionally pursued clandestine relationships. They were strategic, navigating the complex interplay of personal desire, political advantage, and survival. Some used these relationships to secure allies, gain influence, or protect their children's claims to thrones. Others sought emotional fulfillment denied by political marriages. Romance in the medieval court was never just about passion, it was deeply political. Personal relationships could determine alliances, spark rebellion, and even provoke wars. For example, Henry II's affair with Rosamund Clifford directly contributed to conflict within his family. Eleanor of Aquitaine's anger over the affair motivated her sons to rebel, destabilizing the Angevin Empire. Passion had tangible consequences. It altered succession, divided families, and affected the governance of a vast empire. Similarly, in France, accusations of adultery against royal women were often exploited to achieve political ends. Allegations, whether true or fabricated, could delegitimize heirs, create disputes over land and titles, or justify intervention by powerful nobles. Desire was a tool, weaponized for political gain. In the Holy Roman Empire, emperors' secret relationships influenced marriages among nobles, alliances with neighboring states, and even military campaigns. Mistresses and secret lovers were not just companions, they were actors in the high-stakes drama of European politics. These dynamics highlight a critical point. The private and public were inseparable in medieval courts. Love, lust, and desire could not remain hidden. They shaped policy, succession, and history itself. Despite the dangers, romance flourished. Kings, queens, and nobles wrote letters, poems, and messages expressing longing, jealousy, and devotion. These personal documents reveal the human side of medieval rulers, often hidden beneath formal duties and political obligations. Some of these secret correspondences survived. They demonstrate that forbidden love was not just about power or manipulation. It could also be deeply emotional. Many of these real romances inspired legends and literature. Tales like Tristan and Isolde or Lancelot and Guinevere echo the clandestine love affairs of historical figures. These stories served as both entertainment and moral lessons, reflecting societal views on desire, loyalty, and the consequences of forbidden passion. Even when scandal erupted, letters and poems often survive as evidence of human emotion, bridging centuries and giving us glimpses into the hearts of those who ruled Europe. The consequences of secret affairs could be monumental. Some affected personal lives, others altered the course of kingdoms. Rebellion. Eleanor of Aquitaine's sons rebelled against Henry II, in part due to his affair with Rosamund Clifford. Political instability. Accusations of adultery in France destabilized succession, weakened royal authority, and fueled noble rivalries. Overthrow. Edward II's relationships with favourites contributed to his eventual deposition by Isabella of France and Roger Mortimer. Death or imprisonment. Queens and noblewomen accused of infidelity often faced imprisonment or execution. Examples include Marguerite de Bourgogne and the daughters-in-law in the Tour de Nesle affair. These consequences demonstrate that desire in the medieval court was a double-edged sword. While love and passion offered personal fulfillment, they could also trigger political crises, rebellions, and even death. Ultimately, the forbidden sex lives of medieval Europe reveal that even those who seemed invincible were human. Kings and queens, despite their power, wealth, and titles, were subject to the same emotions, temptations, and desires as anyone else. Love, jealousy, ambition, and longing were never absent, even when masked by the veneer of duty and ceremony. Mistresses, lovers, secret letters, and forbidden romances remind us that history is not only shaped by treaties and battles, but also by the human heart. The stories of these relationships are timeless. They resonate because they show that no matter the era or status, passion and desire are forces that cannot be entirely controlled. Forces that can reshape lives, influence empires, and echo through history. Medieval Europe was a world of paradox. Highly structured yet intensely emotional, bound by rules yet driven by desire, ruled by church and crown yet constantly subverted by the human heart. The forbidden romances of kings, queens, and nobility reveal the tension between power and passion, politics and intimacy, a tension as relevant today as it was centuries ago.